This meeting is being recorded.
Supportive growth resources that need to grow. And this month we focused the huddle on sales and marketing. You know, in the past we've talked about things like financing, product management, etc. But we wanted to bring in Jason and Alex. Jason and Alex are both rock star sales and marketing pros. Jason's the chief growth officer and co-founder of the Garage Group, a lean innovation focused company here in Cincinnati. It helps big companies act and operate more like startups. And then previously he was at a market research focused company called Seek. And then he's also just a good innovator and cool guy to hang out with, and he's got a great beard. And then Alex is the senior director of digital marketing programs, right? Alex at Paycor.
Yeah, recently expanded to kind of full demand gen, so online and offline field marketing, program management, and digital. So kind of got all demand gen these days.
Yep. And then Alex was he used to be with Get Noticed, Get Found, GNGF, which was a company that was actually at HCDC in the incubator. Wanted to bring both of them in and really kind of pick their brains on three main areas to putting together a strong sales and marketing plan. First, kind of focused on resources and mindsets. Second, focused on why and who development. And then third, focused on kind of like how and what, like the ways you start to kind of put things to life and execute them. I've got a set list of questions that we'll walk them through, but want to make this as conversational as possible. And if you have questions, feel free to kind of raise your hand and just say, hey, Paul got a question in this space, or here's a specific challenge that I'm dealing with. And so I guess any tone and texture, Jason, you or Alex want to add before we get started, and any other details about you that you want everybody to make sure that they know.
Yeah, I can give a little bit more context and background. So yeah, I've definitely specialized mostly in B2B marketing for the last 14, 15 years or so. So I'm going to have definitely more of the B2B lens to what I've done. B2B technology has been really my specialty over the last 10 to 11 years or so. Started out with Cintas Corporation, so much larger. And I've been with Paycor the last 6 years. So kind of been with that process where it started as founder-led, founder, CEO, through to PE firm, and then we just went public in July. And myself kind of started as more individual contributor, and now kind of leading a full team of 9 under my team. So seen a lot of growth within that. And then to Paul's point earlier, I had some small company agency experience as well too. But again, kind of my focus definitely more on the B2B side. So just some additional color there on my background.
Yeah, and I'd say similar to Alex, my specialty really is enterprise B2B, sales, marketing, brand building, innovation. But then I have the kind of the CEO, serial entrepreneur, bootstrapper mindset as well, because I've usually just always grown through organic growth. Again, leveraging like strategic sales, marketing, and innovation, et cetera, is like really big levers in that. So, Paul?
Yeah. And just more kudos to them. Like both of them have really strong experience on thinking about campaigns, building platforms, and kind of getting out there and hustling to connect, and put kind of strategy into execution mode, which is half the battle with any plan. So just to kick things off, I know Jason, when I was at the Garage Group, and Alex, having connected with you at Startup Cincy last year, I know you did a cool presentation regarding the digital marketing kind of process. And we talked a lot about resources and mindsets as being, you can't just go and build a plan. You got to think about the resources and mindsets that you have going in. And so I'd love to know, in your professional experience, what resources and mindsets are really critical for building and executing strong growth plans. And why don't we start with Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Like I sure as hell don't have it all figured out, but I can share from my point of view and kind of the journey that I've been on. I think it's easy to think about sales and marketing just from a tactical point of view, or it's the things you actually execute versus I think about first for myself, both from a leadership perspective, but also from the sales and marketing and putting myself and my company on the map is like, do I really give a shit about what I'm doing and the value that I want to provide for customers is to me like just point one. And is how I'm projecting that out, like going to have an impact. Cause I think you can do a lot of like tactical marketing stuff, sales stuff in general, but if you truly aren't passionate about what you do and it's not showing through, it's a challenge, right? So I think to me that from a mindset perspective, I think it's super critical, particularly if from a leadership standpoint, is that you are super passionate about the mission of the business and that pervades everything that you do. And then I think where I see teams, and this is again from a leadership mindset on in marketing and sales, so not necessarily getting into the weeds on a lot of stuff, but again, I'm pulling a lever on a campaign or whatever, right? So it's just one aspect of it versus saying like, no, we're going to commit to building marketing and sales as like really strategic levers that we're going to pull on a repeated basis. We're going to learn, we're going to get better, and we're going to continue to stay with it. And I think if you're super passionate about what you do and you commit to saying, I'm not just going to fund a campaign, but I'm going to fund to build like sales and marketing as strategic kind of parts of the business, I think you allow yourself to get better over time, and your time investment is there, but then you just get more reps, you understand more, and you dive in. Versus I think a lot of founders, and again, I speak for myself because I've always been weaker in HR. I've tended to kind of be more the sales, marketing, brand builder and put the emphasis there. But then I look at HR just tactically, here's a lever I pull or something like that, right? And I think I probably would have gotten to even better outcomes if I would have embraced the same mindset on HR. So I share that from a marketing and sales perspective because I think it's easy to look at it as things you go do, mission to do, or outsource versus things that you just embrace as it's a foundational capability to success. It drives valuation, and we're going to put the time and energy and resources behind it to make it work. So, Alex, how about you, man?
Yeah, no, I agree. I love all those. I think that's great foundational as well. And then, I think to me, it often comes down to three key levers: people, process, and technology. So, I think on the people side, you touched on a little bit. What are the gaps in talent? Where are you weak as an owner, where you don't necessarily have to be good at everything? So to your point, Jason, you didn't get where you were because you were an expert at HR, but probably early on somewhere in that growth, you need to make sure that you're figuring out the foundational of the HR piece. So do you need a leader there? Do you need someone strong that's thinking about culture? Because especially as you expand and grow your headcount, culture is going to be key, and it's harder for you to hire and onboard every single new hire. So I think on the people side, really thinking about the balance and really where should that next hire go. So thinking about your growth trajectory, what are the priorities? Is it within product? Is it within sales, marketing? Depending on your company and your current state, really thinking through kind of who that next hire should be, what's the profile for them, et cetera. And then process is one that I think a lot of early stage companies tend to just be, flying by the seat of their pants. But again, as you grow and as you scale, process will be more and more important. So improving efficiencies, increasing scalability, right? You can't scale your time. So at some point, you're going to have to figure out how do we make these processes scalable and more repeatable? And then technology, again, I think comes and can help with some of those pieces as well. So if you have the right technology, you may not need to add the same headcount, or you may not need to build out a bunch of new processes. There's likely some technology that can help out there. Now, of course, it's not free. So again, depending on your stage and your growth and your funding, thinking through when technology plays a role in that, I think is critical. And then, from just a personal mindset, I think hiring people that are lifelong learners, so that growth mindset in your employees, people that are committed to the mission, that you're able to share that mission, get that buy-in, and where they don't feel like they're along for the ride, but they actually have a role to play in that vision, and they see themselves in the future of your company and where they can help make an impact. So ultimately, I think hiring the right people with the right mindset, and then again, thinking about that people, process, technology, how each of those kind of play a role within that growth.
So I love how you kind of brought up the a kind of process there, and then you both talked about, blind spots and things that you may have missed or or omit, right? And so would love to know how you personally assess what either your own or your own organizational blind spots are. Do you have like set processes? I mean, are you tapping into like Myers-Briggs, tool sets? Are there specific books, that you've leveraged to really help you think through that can help, those in the call think about, their own blind spots and how to build out a strong, sales and marketing, function, so to speak. Alex, or go ahead, Jason. Yeah.
I think it's I'm big on just like pattern recognition and understanding like similar successful what they've done from a mindset perspective, and this is more the blind spot on both your leadership but also the sales and marketing strategy and execution. I think it's super easy to fall in love with like an early tactic or how you get it done, or even the tech tool that you can buy and leverage, right? Versus are you curious and are you really trying to understand like what has to be true from a sales and marketing perspective to enable your organization, and then studying what has to be true at different growth trajectories, right? Because if you're raising money versus if you're bootstrapping, I think it's what has to be true to be successful to me are different there. And I think leaders struggle sometimes too when they try to do everything at once versus recognizing like you're founding a capability that's part of the business, and maybe your first 1 or 2 customers is what you're actually going to go fundraise off of. And to me, the process and what has to be true there is different than as you're growing, right? So I think the more that you can seek understanding, whether it's hiring somebody to run marketing and or like talking to even being a part of like a forum like this, talking to people like Alex, like you understand, okay, what has to be true at different growth levels to be able to then say, okay, is our lead gen off, or maybe now we're at a point where we need to grow account size, so we need to think about more features and products we're bringing in, et cetera, right? So it just, to me, it's kind of back to the business. And then I think I'm big on like Gino Wickham and the like entrepreneur operating system and the visionary and integrator. And I think both from a running a company, you can have that, but I think also from a capability perspective, you can have those. So I tend to be more visionary. I'm trailblazing and figuring out new things, but I'm not necessarily the best, like scale it, operationalize it, make it go, right? So I think tools like that are helpful to understand even like your leadership style as it relates specifically to the functional topic today too. So, but Alex?
Yeah, I agree. To your question, Jason, about or I guess Paul asked the question, some of the tools that we use to evaluate, we do have some of those. I've taken, all the assessments, I feel like. So we do try to give some of our teams those different personality assessments to understand, okay, are you more type A? Are you more people oriented? Are you kind of analytic driven? And then we do say, hey, with this is the communication style that's kind of going to work best with that particular personality style. So we've done some of that. Again, we're a bigger company, more resources, but I think you can get to some of those insights with 360 surveys, with asking some of the right questions, with having a transparent culture where you seek feedback, people are able to give it and receive it in a constructive way and don't feel like you're taking it personal or really saying, hey, you're not good at what you do. So I think there is some foundational understanding of how do you evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and build that diverse team that's going to have complementary skill sets together. So I think that is key. And then also to your point around, what worked yesterday won't necessarily work tomorrow. What got you here won't get you there. So I think having an open mind of, okay, yep, maybe we can double down on that strategy, but what else is there? If something changes, if that's no longer scalable, or if that growth rate is going to cap out, what is that next thing? So I think having a deep understanding around someone that is looking at data from both what's working today, what isn't working, having the culture where you're not afraid to fail, that you can test new things. How can you keep pushing to see what is that next thing that may work? And are you able to devote a percentage of time or percent of budget to doing some exploratory research there? And I think trying to, again, balance the execution with the strategy. So how can you carve out time? What is your planning process with your executive team? How far out are you planning? Are you doing it quarterly, 6 months, et cetera? Of course, you got to run the business day to day, but if you're not carving out some time via, say, an offsite leadership cadence meetings to really look forward and think about what's next, where do we go from here, you're eventually going to get overrun by your competitors or won't hit your growth rate. From a book perspective, definitely 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I've gone through that with different leadership teams. I think that is really good, especially if you have a newer management team that you're building. So I think that's always good as well. That can help understand, some of those complementary personality styles, roles, et cetera. And, that book's probably cheaper than doing one of those assessments for all your people too. So those are my quick thoughts anyway.
Oops, I was on mute. You've both talked about a little bit about process and obviously looking for outside examples, right? From which to learn, like, analogs and process. And so, oftentimes you talk to people and they say, oh, we're a startup, right? We're just figuring it out, right? It's almost like a cliche kind of term. It's this idea that, like, hey, we got to be moving and breaking stuff. But, is there, a right or a wrong time to start to kind of introduce process into your resources and mindsets? Is there a too early in your mind, or is it like, hey, now you know what, like, you should have some semblance of a process and some semblance of like a resource accounting, as early as possible? Or is there a critical kind of like stage at which you would really make sure that you're giving an eye toward that?
Alex, you want to jump in first, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can jump in.
Alex, you go, and then Jason go.
Yeah, and again, my opinion, so definitely take it for what it's worth. But my opinion is, once you get to like 3 people, I feel like you got to start introducing some form of process. The more people you add, the more it's going to be, well, I did it this way, this person does it that way. And then as you hire more people on board, you're going to start to realize, ooh, again, I can't scale my time, train up all these people. So also the sooner you do it, the easier it becomes. Once you're at 100 employees, it's a lot harder to now all of a sudden re-document processes, get all this stuff in there. So in my opinion, the sooner you can, the better. And I feel like once you hire a couple of people under you, that's a great opportunity to start to document those. And again, you don't have to go crazy with it, but thinking about, okay, what are the core functions that does take some process where I just do it because I know how to do it. But again, thinking about as you hire, as you double your headcount, how do those processes become repeatable? How can you package that up, document it so that, again, you're not having to take it out of your head and retrain all these people? So again, my opinion, the earlier the better, but Jason would love your thoughts too.
Yeah, and I think like I love all that. And I can give more like the founder, just serial entrepreneur / like build a value perspective as well here. Because I think it's so easy to focus on product and we've hit growth goals and all that. But I think from an outside investment perspective, if we're growing our companies to eventually exit them, like, to me, like one of the most critical, like, just business processes in general is going to be your kind of sales and marketing and approach to driving growth, and it not just being some haphazard thing that maybe you landed one big client or you have one strategic partnership you're leaning on, but you can't repeat the success, right? So I think, to me, going back to the mindset, like if you have that mindset, then I think it's more in practice, the way at least I've thought about it. In the same way, when you're starting out and trying to get the product market fit, and then you're continuing to like grow your business, I think you need to think about the sales and marketing just approach in general the same way. Like it's almost like a piece of software that you're trying, you're learning, you're figuring out what is our repeatable business model here that the traction side of things that complements your product offering, whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, as you try and learn, and you said, okay, the way we do lead gen, we've tried 3 things. This is the thing that's going to have the biggest impact. Process, like document it and process it and just keep moving, right? How we build like trust and respect with potential clients and accelerate them through the funnel. We nailed this process. Okay, we're going to go, let's scale it, right? And I think it's so easy to try to do just a bunch of different things. I always take it back to have some foundational framework that you're using, operating from and improving from. I think I stumbled on how clients buy. I think it's one of the best B2B sales funnels and approaches / books that I've seen. And I always go back to anchoring activities to that framework to say, okay, how effective are we in terms of driving kind of that initial lead gen? How can we be doing that better? So it's partly a documenting process, but it's partly, that's almost like your code base, software base that you're experimenting and improving. And then I think you can strategically then communicate that to key stakeholders, whether that's back to shareholders, board of directors, potential investors, potential like strategic partnerships from an exit standpoint. But I think it's too easy to fall into the trap of, okay, let's document what we've done versus having the strategic mindset of, I have a piece of software that it has to be at point A to get to X top line, but to go to the next growth point, we got to keep improving it. So you want to document, but then you also want to strategically improve and get more effective as you go.
Love it. No, I mean, what I'm hearing is, hey, there's never too early, or at least the earlier the better, to like have some level of process, right? It doesn't have to be, 97 steps, but that there's some, accounting, if you will. I know that word sometimes people don't like. Accounting, it makes people cry. But accounting of what you're trying to do, so and what you're learning. So for those of you who've joined, we've had about 5 or 6 other people join. We're talking with Jason, Hauer, and Alex. Shutte or Shutte? I always forget how to say your name, Alex. I'm sorry.
No worries. Shutte, as in
Shutte. Yeah, I had it right.
Yes,
Good.
Yes. All good, man. As long as you don't replace the U with an I, we're good.
Yeah,
man.
I won't do that. But Jason's at the Garage Group, Chief Growth Officer, and Alex is the co-founder or the Senior Director of Digital at Paycor. We're going to shift gears and move from resources and mindsets into kind of like the why and who development. And when I was at Procter and even at Gallo and a few other companies, we always leveraged a core framework. We had, what we called, at least at Procter, was the brand building framework to really focus our growth plans. And it always started with kind of why the brand of the product existed, and who we wanted to help. And so kind of starting with that, like, are there specific, and there's different frameworks, right? Depending on what book you look at, and even depending on what company that you work at. So I guess in your mind, how critical is kind of starting with why, or starting with why/who, and what types of strategic frameworks do you leverage? And let's start with Alex, and then Jason, will close with you.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with all those things. For us, we kind of take strategic planning as like a 3-stage approach. So we start with defining the problem. So for us, don't jump straight to solutioning, right? So for us, it's thinking about, okay, what are the top strategic problems within within the marketplace, thinking about what's in scope, what's out of scope, what are the constraints for potential solutions. And so there's a lot of research that first goes into that. So what are the market and competitive dynamics? What are the future customer trends? Where is the industry going? What are the disruptors? Maybe you are a disruptor, but what are the potential disruptive trends in the marketplace? We've obviously all experienced COVID this last 2 going on 20 years, been a huge disruptor. Maybe some of your companies came out of COVID, right? thinking through what are those opportunities and adjacencies, and really starting with the problem definition. And then from there, we talk through solutioning. So we could have, say, 5 different problems that we're outlining. I'll kind of take that first and then go through each of those to then outline what are the strategic outcomes. So that's where we do pull in what we use as like the RICE method. So if you've heard of that, so thinking about reach, impact, competence, and effort. So we have, over 2,000 employees now, so definitely have scaled pretty big, but we still can't necessarily do everything. So I think focus is a key thing. And if you struggle with prioritization, if you want to Google the RICE framework, that's something that we use to really help understand, okay, again, what is the reach? What's the impact? What is that confidence in our ability to actually do that solution? And then how much effort is that? And then that can go into short-term versus long-term planning and really help us prioritize on that. And again, the goal is to think through, okay, 6 months out, but then also that 3 to 5 year vision. And again, we know that's going to change, especially if you're early stage, but really making sure you're not sacrificing short-term for the long-term. And so from there, that's when we prioritize. So it could be business cases where we try to say, what is the ROI? How do we stack rank these? And really it's all about executive alignment to ultimately say, hey, this is where we want to go. How do we communicate this down to our employees so that they understand the priorities and so that they can say no, right? So in my opinion, you don't have a strategy until you can say no. So helping your company and your employees focus on those strategies is a key part to go forward. So that's some of what we use, but Jason would love to hear your perspective too.
Yeah, that's good, Alex. I come out of like when I was at Seek, we did a lot of in context immersive research, so design thinking type approaches to understanding just like customer needs. And I've always been pretty curious, just if you have a service mentality in general, it's like I want to understand somebody, the context they're in, so that I can help him or her, like whether improve a process, improve their business, et cetera, right? And so I don't think marketing and sales like strategically are repeatable if you don't have a very, very clear definition of who you're trying to help. So whether it's your audience, et cetera, right? And I think it's tricky from an entrepreneurship perspective because that's part of, you're playing the game early of who am I going to help? Like what pain am I solving? And then what has to be true to solve that pain. And it's never clear, right? So I think you have to always hypothesize who you're learning and going. And typically, I mean, you guys know this, when you're early, it's not as clear, but then as you continue to go forward, it becomes clear, right? And so I would just say, like I was sharing this before on the evolution of the sales and marketing plan, the better understanding you have of who you're serving, just down to functional role, industries, any ways you can break it, you start to then get an understanding of, okay, what is their current situation? And then are you driving switching behavior? Are you selling something kind of that is just it's something they don't even have budget for, they have never bought before, right? So it's understanding really, really what's their situation, how by understanding pain, understanding then from your product, your solution / competitive set, like what truly has to work there for them to want to buy from you. And then what I love about that, how clients buy as a framework, is because they talk a lot, not just about the just basic blocking and tackling of awareness building and then doing a demo, capability pitch, whatever, but they talk a lot about trust and respect. And I think the more you understand who you're serving, why they're potentially going to buy your solution, what the competitive set is, you can lean harder into truly adding value to them because you understand them, and the trust and respect like levers are higher. And I think it improves conversion. It improves your cycle time in terms of initial to actually book business. I think without that, you're just kind of trying a bunch of shit, and you may or may not hit the mark. You may or may not be resonant with somebody, right? But I think the more that you truly understand who you're serving and you understand all the nuts and bolts around that, I think it just makes you just that much more effect. To me personally, it gives me more conviction for helping them in the mission of the business. But then it gives you just the inputs you need to be successful. But it's not rocket science. Pretty straightforward. I see teams struggle mightily though when they don't understand any, like, who they're serving, or they got a referral and they happen to get a project, but they don't really understand like what's the value that we're providing here, right? And that's a lot of like the enablers Alex is talking to in terms of alignment meetings, et cetera. Like that's all talking about all input that then goes into a lot of those decision making processes and strategy setting processes. So Paul?
Yeah, and I remember at Paycor earlier on, we were happy to get all the clients. We were like, cool, we'll take you if you're a 1 employee company, we'll take you if you're 1,000 employee. But over the years, we've really focused in more, right? Where we said, hey, these are the key industries, because we've done the research where we say our product has a better fit here. We have better customer lifetime value, where they're more likely to add on products, more likely to renew, to refer. So that's where from there, that who has helped us iterate our product to add additional features, additional integrations, additional partners to really serve on really 4 key industries that we're specialized into now for healthcare, manufacturing, restaurant, and retail. And so now our marketing is really trying to personalize for those key pain points. Not that we won't take certain industries, but in terms of who we're really pitching as our persona, who we're doing targeted campaigns for, who we're kind of helping our sellers sell to, really having those personas and being more specific in mind about who we're best fit for is going to help you create better messaging, a better product, and better service those customers as well too. So yeah, totally agree.
I love that, Alex, too, because I think when you take it down to both the industry, client situations, maybe the benefits are similar, but then they manifest themselves in different ways and you communicate them differently. So like I imagine the cases you guys share are different, et cetera, right? So like I love that because it lets you get to the right level of granularity and execution to be resonant, to be relevant. And I don't think people are talking about it enough, but I think in this kind of, we're in the middle of the newest wave of COVID, but things have fundamentally changed even on the B2B, like sales and marketing side of things. And people just don't want to be interrupted at all, right? And so I think a lot of what we're talking about here is more critical than ever, because if you don't understand who you're serving and you're truly not adding value, they don't give a shit.
Right.
And so that getting down to that level of industry, role, how am I trying to help this person truly move their business forward, will allow you to be successful. Otherwise, you're interrupting and you're not going to be as successful.
Yeah, no one likes to be sold, but everyone likes to buy, right? So make it easier for them to buy, make them see, the value, and make it say, hey, yeah, I can't run my business without you or live my life without your product, right? That's what you want. And you won't get it if you're trying to speak to everyone. Having that focus will help the relevancy for your buyer.
So kind of in that vein, you've talked about obviously knowing your customer, right? Personas, really knowing their problems, like their pain points, right? Jobs to be done. How are some ways that you've both found effective at really getting to know your customer, And so, I mean, like, it sounds easy to say, hey, go talk to them, right? But like, sometimes you should talk to them. Sometimes you should refer to different types of studies showing their action. Sometimes you should look at their, transaction history digitally, right? Like, what are different ways that you found that you've put to use to really get to know your customers and then who they are? Because a lot of times you might say, hey, you know what, I'm targeting a CFO, a CMO, a chief purchasing officer, a marketing manager. And so you got like 5 different people that you're trying to like get to. And it can be kind of an onerous task. So did you have any words of wisdom as to like really getting down and understanding them?
I mean, the way I'm wired, so I think I would take this back to how you're wired, but I do stations and being in context. So like over a decade with the Grudge Group, I think it's just been literally thousands of conversations with end clients. And then when you get to the point where you start like having pattern recognition of being able to Alex's point in terms of segmenting and understanding size of company and situation, that's then you truly understand it. Otherwise, I think you're just kind of hypothesizing and trying. But for me, I'm big on thousands of conversations, or how many of it is for you to get to pattern recognition, and then having very, very similar conversations. So I'm going to reach out to company revenue band X in this industry, this role, and just go deep and just concentrate, because that's really where you start to get the understanding, but also the pattern recognition, and then it gives you the more confidently scale. And then I think you can start to hypothesize that across industries and replicate it. I think Ash Myra and Running Lean does a good job in terms of like discussion guides and early conversations. And I even recommend people that go back and do that if they already are having some success, but they don't know why, because that it just gives you depth and understanding of truly the pain you're solving, how, and the context. But I'm big on, you can do a lot of research and everything, but if you don't actually get face to face with customers, you're not really gonna have the understanding conviction to help them.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for sure do some of the external research. So, for us, HR is a key persona. So there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of research being done about HR, a lot of websites that focus on HR, industry publications, Society of Human Resources, for example. So there are some things externally, but I do think, your own sort of first party data, qualitative and quantitative, is going to be most critical. So the customer conversations, how do you deploy surveys? So are there certain key points within the customer life cycle where you could just easily trigger an email survey that asks for feedback? Having those conversations one-to-one is definitely important, but I think how do you facilitate those as well? So are there certain industry events where you could organize more of a client meetup or a user group, as an example, and kind of give them some small group FaceTime, you pay for their dinner, give them some drinks or whatever, and it's kind of a networking for them, but then you also get the benefit of having those conversations in a little bit less formal setting too. So I think combing your website analytics, your CRM, you can do different tests, A/B tests online, Google Optimize, eye tracking, video survey results, things like that you can definitely do. But to Jason's point, having the actual conversation, being able to ask the questions and be able to do that multiple times over is ultimately going to be what's going to be most impactful.
So I want to ask one more question on this section, but before I do, I just want to throw it out there and see if anybody on the line has any specific questions that they'd like to ask Jason or Alex. And if not, no pressure, right? I've got plenty of questions here to serve up to them.
I guess one quick follow-up. Sorry, I heard there's a question. But one
sounded
quick
like, Apps, is that you?
Yeah, go ahead, Apps.
Negative. I think that was maybe Chris. Looks like he came.
Sorry.
That's all right. Alex, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I was just going to do one final just quick thing for in terms of the customers. I think also sort of a pitfall is interviewing your customer today versus your customer that you want tomorrow, right? So I think you can kind of get twofold, where the customer conversation of who's using your product is key, but I think also getting that ideal customer profile of the prospect that you want for tomorrow is another key factor. So again, don't focus on just who you have right now that's just easy, easy to pull. Hey, this guy loves us, we'll use him, but is he really your ideal customer? So just that one watch out as you're doing some of the interviews.
I think it's easy to get into scale mode, even the vertical by vertical. And I think it goes back to the mindset conversation we're having, because just because you figured out one vertical doesn't necessarily mean it completely scales over. But then I think in a weird way, I think when you start to scale your team, you have more folks that are better at execution versus search. And so I would just say, make sure you as a founder, as the entrepreneur, may need to be involved in some of that to help assimilate what you're learning and making sense of it, versus just assuming everything you've figured out can scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's really along those same lines. And you guys are awesome, by the way. I really appreciate it. And you just talked about verticals, and you talked about like strategic plans and personas. And is there really any advice you would say in the fact that, being more strategic versus opportunistic, meaning that, in a product and IT technology, you're saying, okay, we're going to build this solution. It's going to really be targeted for, a particular industry that we're familiar with, but it could really go in a lot of different areas. And so, you strategize around, targeting a certain vertical, but then there's also these opportunities that come up as like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And, from a group standpoint, communication, everything like that. I mean, is there any kind of advice you would give on if you kind of switch gears a little bit too much in regards to, kind of taking the whole team, saying, okay, we're going to switch things up. We're going to kind of go into a different market now. I mean, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts would be on that.
I mean, I can start here more from a CEO perspective than sales and marketing. I think one of the things that I feel like I've learned the hard way over time is just because you can just jump into different verticals doesn't mean it's actually the best thing for the business. Because I think the thing that I feel like it will enable all of you to be successful, and I think it's just what makes businesses in general successful is focus. And I don't think you truly understand implications of, okay, we're gonna just nail this vertical, but we're gonna start going places, because it has impact in terms of everything you do, from reach out to how you service those clients, et cetera, right? And how you fit, and is it differentiated? And I think it can be great for the business if you nail it. But I almost feel like depending on where you are in your cycle, like I feel like you've got to just be confidently nail a vertical or a segment of the market and just be the best you can, and then smartly kind of wake up other verticals and other segments of the market, right? Because I think you don't realize it until you're in the middle of it, that you start creating opportunity cost. You start actually harming maybe the early vertical that you only have 10% distribution on, and you could just continue to just hit it super hard. And then that's confidence and knowledge and experience of your team, because it's on repetition, like it just gets stronger and better, right? And I think I would just encourage all of you to think about it both from like, if I truly nailed this niche, this segment of the market, this vertical, before I just start aggressively going after other ones. And I know there's pressure if you're raising money and all that comes into it, but I just, from my own experience, and then just talking to other entrepreneur friends, like it's so easy to not nail the original vertical, and then you start waking up other ones, and then maybe the financial profile in terms of margin and deal size isn't as attractive as the original vertical. Like it creates so many different like compensatory issues. So I'm a strategic visionary. Like I love being out on the edge, so I have to always balance that. But I think the thing that I've learned is you have to pace it in, and just because you can send an email doesn't mean you can actually like, that's the best thing for the business at that part of your growth trajectory. So, but Alex.
Yeah. I think it's, it's the balance between testing, right? So again, I think it's good to continue to test, to push yourself, but is it more so chasing a shiny object? Is it the squirrel, or is it truly a strategic area that you're looking to test into, right? So I think is it a stretch or is it a break, right? So how much are you going to have to change your other business processes? Or it could be, hey, we get that revenue right now, but it's going to cost us way more to support them. Or it turns out our product actually doesn't quite work that way, so now we have to do some new sprints to try to meet their needs. Or they're going to be super hands-on and again ask for a lot more service, and now all of a sudden the cost to service them is much more expensive than that initial cost of sale and revenue. So I think it's, again, you'll have to figure that out for yourself. So I think it's, that initial revenue and cash flow, I'm sure, is nice, but trying to understand, okay, what does this mean strategically? Could we do this repeatedly for other customers like them? Or is this kind of a one-off that may not end up being best for us long-term? So yeah, great question though.
No, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. And so I want to shift to the last section, which is more focused on, at the end of the day, you can't sit there and strategize all the time, right? You got to put the rubber to the road and, execute, right? I think, what was it, Jeff Bezos said that like our execution will be our strategy, and they'll out execute. And so, I guess to start off there, like, the beginning of execution, a lot of times is about capturing the why and the who and starting to deliver on, okay, well, how do I reach you, right? And how do you develop strong messaging strategies that really incorporate key distinctiveness for your companies as you're thinking about those strategies? Is there a specific way or process that you leverage?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on, again, some of what comes out of your strategy will then hopefully guide you in your execution. So from like a digital perspective, I kind of group my strategies into 3 buckets. So generate, capture, convert is kind of what I use. So how do you generate new demand? How do you capture existing demand? And how do you convert those that you're already engaging with, either to a lead, form completion, or to a sale? And so kind of depending on what came out of your strategies, where it could be, okay, do we have an awareness challenge? Are we sort of a new product that no one necessarily even knows they have a pain, so we have to educate the market? If so, you're going to have to do a lot more top of funnel thought leadership, content creation. There could be say a research study that you do, release a white paper report, and it's really more content distribution, thought leadership, webinars, guest posts, PR, AR, that sort of thing. If you're trying to kind of break into an established industry, and if there's a lot of players already, then maybe you're going to focus more on how do you capture that existing demand for your product. So for me, I came up as a big search marketer, so I'm big on SEO, paid search, et cetera. So for that, it's like, hey, if someone's Googling HR software, in my case, I want to make sure we're showing up, right? So they already have a pain. Now they're literally looking for a solution to help solve it. If it's more, hey, we're generating a ton of traffic, maybe we went viral in a TikTok video, but people are coming to our site, they're not staying around, they're not converting. How do you optimize your content? Or if it's, hey, we can get them to sales, but sales can't close, how do we look at that part of the funnel? Do we need to have more competitive battle cards if we're losing to a certain competitor more often than not? Do you have the ability to look at reasons why you lost? Is that in your CRM? Is it product functionality? Is it price? So I think looking at all those things, you can then kind of focus on really where you need to execute. And then it's really, you got to do. So to your point, you can't strategize all day. I think you got to figure out what are some key areas, key focus areas that we're going to try to execute on. And then do you have the analytics and data foundation to know what are my success metrics? What are the KLIs and what are the KPIs? So leading indicators, performance indicators. How will I know if this is working or not? And then do I have the data infrastructure in place to be able to get those flags to say, okay, we're going to pivot because these leading indicator metrics don't look like they're going on the right track. Let's stop and reconvene the messaging, do a different test, whatever it may be. So that's kind of what I've done in my approach. But yeah, good question. Jason, what do you think?
Hey, Jason.
Alex, you're brilliant, man. That's good. This guy's battle tested. You can tell. No, I mean, I agree with everything he's saying. I think to me, I'll take it back. I think when you're scaled, like you have that point of view. For me, when you're first starting out, like I think that you have to have a framework you're operating from. So I wouldn't fall it out the window if you don't like it, but some framework. So I use how clients buy as just an example. You have to know like where you are on the evolution of that. And then I would say when you're first starting out, you can't do everything, but I think I had the tension of like, I wanted everything to be perfect before I moved, but then I realized I only figure stuff out when I actually go do something, right? So I think you have to have a framework you're operating from, but then you have to have a willingness to just go try stuff and learn and update the model as you go. And then I would say when you're early, just even a couple million, you have to be comfortable creating new problems for yourself versus feeling like you have the perfect, you're conducting this perfect symphony, right? And so I remember early on, like I was 2 years in and I'm learning, and I'm like, hey, if we ever really want to kind of to build this thing out, we got to go get in front of a lot of people, and we got to learn, and we got to drive it forward. So like I remember I sent like thousands of emails and got in front of a bunch of customers. Then all of a sudden we had a problem to where we weren't converting as much. And then so whether you're looking at advanced data or you're curious and you're studying, it's like, okay, our positioning is off and we're not necessarily hitting our offering as much. So let's learn that. And then we got to a point where we were closing, but we weren't closing enough fast enough. And I started looking at, okay, the credibility and the trust kind of cycles and how are we accelerating that, right? And so I think early you have to have the framework, you have to be willing to learn through doing, but then you have to have that strategic mindset of studying what you've learned and then assimilating that back into the model. But then you have to get right back into the arena and keep learning. And then I think it's helpful to have the right people around you that are mentors or executors. But then I would also say, just from a leadership perspective, thinking about like, what's the nail or the thing you have to hit. And I'll tell you this, like you guys probably know this, but there's maybe 3 Alexes in all of Cincinnati. Like there's not a lot of them out there. And so I think you just have to be thoughtful in terms of, or flexible in terms of how you actually get shit done. Because in some cases you can hire somebody like Alex. In a lot of cases you can't. So you either have to break the job up, you have to find an agency. You got to be flexible there, right? So that's just like another just executional point in terms of staffing and how you get stuff done. And then honestly, a lot of times, like you got to maybe hire the imperfect person and put the right mentor with them, or you got to be in the trenches there with them. But that's the thing I would share. And then I think it's being involved in the execution and not just being hands off. Well, I don't know sales and marketing, because you have to know it as part of a pitch story. You have to know it as part of, even if you're going to sell your business at some point, knowing like how the sausage is made, how you get clients, et cetera. Right. So, but agree with everything Alex shared. So just more of those foundational pieces I'd add.
Love it. I've got, if you both have time for one more question from me, and then ask if anybody has any others.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah. Good to go.
Cool. So, I mean, you've talked a bit about, obviously we started off with the resources and why, who, and moved into, tactics, and, at each stage we even talked a little bit about like how they overlap, right? Because it's kind of a continuous process that's iterative. And, earlier on, I can't remember which one of you said this, but like, I think you both said it, is getting through to people is pretty challenging right now. And so I had a conversation with somebody the other day. It said like that they used to have really strong ebooks with strong click-through rates, on some of their campaigns for a marketing SaaS company. And now they're not getting nearly as much, response on their email campaigns and on their click-through rates as it relates to like some of the white papers that they've put out. And so I want to use it as a lead in to say, hey, what are some of the things that you've seen evolve and change in terms of tactics that you've leveraged? What are ones that you've kind of seen go by the wayside, or ones that you're really leaning into a lot more heavily now, that you think are just some that people really should be thinking about? And so let's start with Jason.
I'll share a mindset, but then something specifically. I think, to me, if you truly have that empathy building mindset, that you're curious and you're constantly studying what your customers are doing, then I think it's easy to pivot. If you've done that in the past and then you're just kind of leaning on what you've done before, but you don't actually know how their behavior has changed, company strategies have changed, maybe how their role responsibilities have changed, like what they're trying to accomplish, like it has changed, then you're kind of a sitting duck, right? So I think the more that you can understand, to Alex's point before, in terms of just maybe some of that macro market data or things that are specific to an industry, but then for your actual customers, like what has changed, that the more that you can understand that, then I think it allows you to change out. You don't necessarily change your strategic framework, but you change out some of the hows in terms of how you're getting that done, right? And so I think one of the things that I've noticed that started pre-COVID was a lot more referral based kind of inbound for us. And that's like almost all of our business now is coming from referrals. And I think the reason is there's a lot more people interested in what we do than before. You have to be a highly experienced, highly educated person to actually buy it and or even know who to talk to. And then it's a complicated sale, right? And so I think people are being put into new roles. They're being asked to drive innovation faster. They're not completely up to speed, so that there's just more referral activity happening. And then the thing for me that I've started to look at is, instead of just having quick catch-up conversations with past clients, the big question, like I'm challenging the team with, is like, how do we continue to add downstream value even after sale and after a project, so that we're helping them be successful in their role, but then we're staying top of mind in relevant ways. And if really a lot of our business is coming from referrals, like to me, that's a smart way to do it, versus just asking people to pass us on to other clients, and or just when they don't have enough time to even catch up for coffee or something, just how do we add value? How do we stay in front of them, and how do we help them be successful? And then we get the benefit of the earned referral from doing a good job on a project or an engagement. And then they think about us like for that next project and to refer us on. So that's something I've been thinking about. Before, we would have put so much time and energy in trade shows in the top of the funnel. And that's just, people aren't going to them anymore. Like the investment kind of ROI profile just isn't there for us right now. So it's just thinking about, how is the customer behavior changed, and then how am I gonna shift my model to kind of meet the needs of reality right now? So Alex.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We are still seeing success with some of the top of funnel, PDF, white paper type things, but it's directly related to a problem that our clients are having right now. So for example, we just put out an ebook on how to attract and retain hourly workers when money isn't one of your levers, essentially, right? So thinking about, okay, what is a key challenge that our clients have right now? And where, yeah, we talk about product within that, but it's really more about best practices, tips, where we're focused on, say, 100 to 500 employee company, where they may not have a chief HR officer, or even smaller companies than that may have someone wearing the HR hat. So for us, we can work with that content, but it's got to be relevant to a pain point our customers have now, where you start to say, I understand you, and then it layers down to, oh yeah, we have a solution that can help you with this problem. But having that thought leadership of that understanding of your customer and what their top pain points are is critical. So that's what we're seeing. We definitely see success still with SEO, but we see kind of the perfect marriage of SEO content that has more of an actionable, downloadable item, where, say, we had before, at the height of COVID, we had, say, a resource for a mask policy template, for example, where we saw a ton of search volume in it, and we created just a simple 3-page PDF, and we got thousands of leads from it because we were able to rank well for that term, and it had a direct kind of lead gen action for it. So again, I think you can do some of these inbound tactics still, but it's figuring out what is that pain point that's key for your customers and prospects right now, and how do you make sure that you can show up addressing that pain point, and then make sure your sellers or product can really tie it into the solution that you offer. So yeah, agree with that. I do think on the sales side, we found that the generic tactics of cold calls, general emails, they're not getting responses anymore. People don't pick up cold calls. People don't reply to emails. You've got to be relevant. So we do find that the more ability you can personalize that outreach, either based on their behavior, based on the pain points of that persona, the more relevant it's going to be, the more likely you're going to be able to get a reply. Additionally, we found offline and kind of in-person, if comfortable. We know, of course, things are a little crazy right now, but even things like direct mail. So postcards, physical mailers, those are coming back. Even though I'm a digital guy, those things are having a breakthrough now, where, again, people are just not replying to emails, not answering calls. So getting creative and finding other ways to break through the noise and thinking about a multi-channel approach is key.
Awesome. Thanks to you both. Are there any questions from anybody out there before we close things up?
Yeah, thanks, guys. This is apps. So I think, Alex, you just countered what my intuition was, which is a little bit of what Jason had said. It's, or at least how I interpreted what he had said, which is it's not so much the channel as is the message. And,
Yeah.
and if your message is relevant and specific to a customer pain point or need, then whether it's an email or whether it's a postcard or a freaking smoke signal, it almost doesn't matter. I mean, am I off there?
I would say the channel matters based on the person and the segment, right? Like for us, direct mail, it's a challenge in general. So I think like the referral channel is working. So to me, I think it's really understanding what is the channel and or being willing to experiment with channels around your target segment. The message is critical, but I think the channel is changing is what I would say. But Alex?
Yeah, I agree with that. So, restaurant is one of our target industries. They're not at a computer responding to email. So we find email open rates for restaurant versus healthcare very, very different. So I do think your channel kind of mix changes a bit depending on your target prospect. But again, the messaging is more the foundational piece. And then to Jason's point, being able to experiment, being able to layer on different channels, you can kind of test and see what works or what doesn't. I would say a multiple touches is needed now more than ever. So depending on what that channel mix is could vary, but I think it is fact that you're going to probably need multiple channels, multiple touches in order to reach your buyer today.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I mean, it totally makes sense. I love that RICE acronym that you shared, Alex, and that at the end of the day, right, like the message matters, but it needs to reach the right place, and so if there's nobody looking up, then the smoke signal won't work. But if everybody's looking up, then the smoke signal will work.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
cool. Any other questions for him? All right. So hey, this was great. Loved having both of your expertise with everybody here. I love the acronyms that you shared, right? Those are great. I love the insights as it relates to like resources and the need to understand where your own gaps are. And then loved how you talked about this is all kind of continuous and that it really relies on your ability to get out there and learn and continue to connect. And because that's half the battle is getting out there. And, Jason, you and I have worked together and obviously like, I saw it firsthand, you getting out and talking to people, and it almost becomes, it's a skill in and of itself because it helps you develop pattern recognition that can be as good as a computer, frankly. So thank you both for being on. We really appreciate it. Next month on the Huddle, it'll be focused on product development. And so, join us, for those of you that are remaining, we're going to talk about what are different strategies that you should leverage in developing new and innovative products. All right.
Paul, thanks for facilitating a great combo and just all the prep work and all that. So it means a lot that you invited me. I'm sure Alex the same. And
yeah,
nice leadership, man. Good job.
Think the world of both of you. So that was why we wanted to bring you in.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And again, definitely don't have all the answers, but hopefully, you guys were able to get some helpful nuggets and perspective. And yeah, you got to see some very different hairstyles here presented to you today. So
yeah, or none. Like I'm losing it. So
exactly. I got the top, Jason's got the beard, and Paul's got
got less. Doesn't have the reach it once did.
There you go. Right.
Hey.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Alex. See you guys.
Take care.
Enjoyed it. Very good.